This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth on the absolutely devastating news that the beautiful town of Jasper, Alberta has essentially just burned to the ground. Parks Canada knew this was a ticking time bomb after multiple experts warned them about this, and they chose to do nothing. Over 50% of the town's structures are now completely gone, and nothing but ashes remain in their place, as can be seen and confirmed by these videos.
Okay, this lines up with the gas. We may need one or two. So once I know, I'll let you know. Good. Sounds good. Okay, thanks, Blake.
The devastation there is horrific, but none of this should come as a surprise. I warned Canadians in my 2016 documentary film on the Fort McMurray fires about what was going on and what could be expected in the future. And in 2017, a Conservative member of Parliament warned everybody about what was coming, and nobody listened.
Mr. Speaker, Jasper National Park, one of Canada's major tourist destinations, has been devastated by the pine beetle infestation. Much of the forest is dead or dying. The dead trees are a tremendous fuel load and present a significant risk to the community of Jasper. Residents are concerned for their own safety and that of the visitors and the security of their homes. With a high risk of wildfires fueled by a forest devastated by the pine beetle, have the Liberals put a plan in place to protect this park?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government is absolutely committed to the ecological integrity of our national parks. That is my first priority as a minister. We are working very hard in all of our parks, including Jasper National Park. I look forward to talking to the member further about this and seeing how we can move forward. Thank you.
As it turns out, they didn't move forward on anything. And in 2018, Parks Canada was warned again. And they responded by saying this: "We're quite comfortable with where we are with our own emergency planning." This is an article from April of 2018. Jasper National Park not prepared for potential forest fire catastrophe, researchers say. 2 BC researchers say Jasper National Park is due for a catastrophic forest fire, and they're worried officials aren't doing enough preparation and prevention for it. Emily Begin and Ken Hodges said a major forest fire in the area is an inevitability. It's a matter of when, not if, Begin told CBC's Radioactive. They've both been foresters for 40 years and have been studying Jasper National Park. They found multiple issues with the forest that make it susceptible to fire. You have a fire suppression that has occurred for many years, therefore you get a lot of dead fuel that would have been consumed by a natural process, Hodges said. The mountain pine beetle adds even more fuel to the situation, Hodges said. With those factors, all it would take is what he calls a 30-30-30 day. 30% humidity, 30 degrees, and 30-kilometer winds to put the forest and the adjacent town site at risk. And after getting this warning from the experts, here's what Parks Canada had to say. Jasper is located in a forested environment and wildfires are always a concern to us. We're quite comfortable with where we are with our own emergency planning and evacuation planning. So in other words, thanks for the tip, but we got this. Now here's where things get even crazier. Some people knew what was coming, and so they wanted to take the appropriate steps all by themselves, but they were blocked by bureaucratic red tape. Because did you know that Parks Canada requires a permit for the removal of any tree that may catch fire? To apply for a Parks Canada tree removal permit, you will need to fill out a Parks Canada tree removal application, which includes a completed application where you are required to list the tree species and the exact number of trees, the purpose of the removal, if considered hazardous, a written danger tree assessment from a certified danger tree assessor with proof of their certification is also required. You'll need photos of every single one of the trees. You're going to need the dimension site plan illustrating the location of the trees, structures, and lot lines on the leasehold. And you'll need to flag every single tree of concern with flagging tape. Here's what the application looks like. This is page 1, and this is page 2 with all the required supporting documents. The sheer amount of paperwork alone here has already hindered a lot of people from doing what they needed to do. And on top of all of this, you've got environmentalists within the government who refused to do anything because they didn't want to alter the pristine environment. Liberals were warned in 2017 Jasper was a tinderbox, but government greenies refused to act. According to newly unearthed documents, the Liberal government was warned as early as 2017 that Jasper was a tinderbox waiting to explode, but climate activists within the government refused to alter the pristine environment. Guys, I can't help but notice all of the similarities to what happened in Alberta in 2016 during the Fort McMurray fire. And back then, I put out a documentary-styled video to explain what was happening and to serve as a warning for the future. So I'd like to end today's video with this short 5-minute documentary film that I made over 8 years ago now, that will show you how everything we're seeing in Jasper right now has been seen before, and it could have been prevented if that's what they wanted to do. And my friends, if you appreciate my efforts to bring you this information, please check the link to pressfortruth.ca/donate. You can find that in the top of the description of whatever platform you're watching this video on. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like and share this video and stay tuned for more. And here's my video on the Fort McMurray fires, and let me know in the comment section below if you see the same similarities to what happened then and what's happening with Jasper today. Check it out. Like virtually every problem in this country, the blame rests on state control, and the Fort McMurray fires are no exception. The fire began on May 3rd, where it swept through the region, destroying over 2,000 homes, forcing the largest wildfire evacuation in Alberta's history. But what factors made this fire so destructive? Was it because Alberta Premier Rachel Notley slashed $5.3 million from the Alberta firefighting budget only weeks before? Or because her government refused to utilize Canada's largest water bomber? While those were certainly factors, there are deeper concerns to be worried about. 5 years ago, Slave Lake, another northern Alberta town, had a massive wildfire clear through the neighborhood. The damage was totaled at $800 million. The province funded an inquiry, and 18 months later, a report was published. The first recommendation was to cut down trees near municipal buildings, roads, and hospitals. But in this age of environmental fascism, where cutting down trees is considered a sinful act, the report was ignored. In fact, just ignoring the report would have been better than what actually happened. Places like Fort McMurray, under pressure from environmental groups, actually planted more trees next to the highways and buildings, all in the name of ecotourism. While the wildfires was a natural disaster, the overall damage, especially in Fort McMurray, was man-made. Environmentalists literally fueled the fire with short-term thinking. Aesthetics took priority over safety, and the result was devastating. Not that these fascists care at all. Imagine if a Quebec town of over 80,000 people was evacuated over a natural disaster. Justin Trudeau would spend billions and he'd visit for a photo op. But when it comes to the home of Canada's oil sands, all he said was that he would match the Rockefeller-owned Red Cross donations. As well, when Russia offered help with a handful of firefighting aircraft capable of dumping 42 tons of fire retardant, Justin turned them down, as well as offers from the US and Mexico. Tom Moffat, a former NDP candidate from southern Alberta, called the fire karmic, implying that the home of the oil sands deserves the destruction. And while he did apologize, certainly there are plenty of leftists that are cheering the destruction. And if they're not cheering the wildfire, they're calling it an act of global warming. But while officials have not yet determined the cause of the fire, many believe it was lightning combined with dry conditions of the May season. Nothing out of the ordinary, just nature, like a landslide or an earthquake, an unfortunate but natural disaster. We are in an El Niño cycle, where water temperatures in the Pacific Ocean rise, causing numerous changes like warmer weather here in Canada. British Columbia has had milder winters, while Alberta has been drier. The Fort McMurray fire was the result of an El Niño cycle, aging forests, bureaucratic mismanagement, and a tree planting campaign that was discouraged but ignored after the Slave Lake fire in 2011. In a world where democracy rules, where private property is undermined in the name of environmental justice, where firefighting budgets can be cut at the discretion of a socialist premier, and where international help can be discarded by a group of politicians in Ottawa, the result is a disaster that is far worse than it should have been.
Nationwide here in Japan. So there is, I think, a lot of reason to be skeptical of that. But I think we also have to reserve our skepticism for the other side of the argument, in terms of people who, for example, claim that 14,000 deaths could be attributed directly to the immediate few months after Fukushima, which I think is, again, a highly dubious study with a lot of methodological problems.